And let's move on now to look at just some simple practice questions. So I'm going to go through a series of part 3 questions because there's no real easy way to prepare for this topic or to part 3 because there are so many topics and you never know which questions you are going to get. So same thing that we've been doing. I will basically put up the question, pause and record yourself answering. Which kind of athletes make the most money? I did look at this PowerPoint before I started recording to see if I had any mistakes. So what kind of athletes make the most money? Pause, speak, and back. So, well, across the whole world, generally football players and boxers make the most money. For example, Ronaldo and Messi can earn over $100 million a year, and I know Floyd Mayweather, the famous boxer, was the highest earning athlete in the world a couple of years ago. Other sports that might make a lot of money include Formula One, tennis, and golf. So you might mention 2 sports and then mention maybe an example of how much money they make or the people, pardon me, the people that make the most money in those sports. Or you might divide the sports. You might say the team sports which make the most money would probably include soccer and basketball. Whereas for individual sports, I think boxing, golf, and tennis make the most money. There's different ways you can answer that question. You'll notice that's also a bit of a listing question, looking to put the categories in there. Okay. I think the most money an athlete earned in one year was Floyd Mayweather, the boxer from America. I think in 1 year he made something like $187 million from just a couple of 2 fights and his other promotions. It actually might have been more money than that. Let's have a look at another question. How can someone become a successful athlete? So looking at a couple of questions on the same topic here. Again, pause, think, speak. How can someone become a successful athlete? Well, for somebody to become a successful athlete, I think there are 2 key things that need to happen. The first thing is they need to have the physical body to start with. So, generally, if you're going to be a successful basketballer, you need to be tall. But the second thing they need is determination and hard work, because there are lots of tall people who are not successful at basketball. It's the ones that have both of these things that really go on to do a good job. I've chosen those 2 things there. Again, I put 2 things together to make that happen. Let's have a look at another question. Would you agree that people are born with the ability to play sports well? Pause, think, speak, record. And back to me. I don't really agree that people are born with the ability to play sports well. You don't have a child pick up a football or basketball for the very first time when they're 7 years old and play amazingly. They will pick it up and they'll practice throwing and catching from a young age. And the more they play sports as a child, the better they will be at playing sports later in life. Again, that's an opinion question. Some people might say that you've got the DNA that means you're going to be better at sports, but I think it's it's impossible to say that somebody would automatically be wonderful at a sport without having played that sport before. So certainly they have to work very hard and train a lot at playing that sport. Interesting kind of idea when you look at the culture between China and Australia, for example. All through my childhood, every weekend I'd be playing some kind of sport. In school, we played many, many, many different sports. In my free time, I'd be out with my friends playing lots of sport. So for me, it was a natural thing. By the time I'm 15, I can play tennis and soccer and badminton and football and swimming and cycling and water polo and rugby, and I can pretty much play any sport and be pretty okay at it. Whereas, unfortunately, for most Chinese students, you spend your weekends and free time with your extra maths class or extra English class. Thank you. That's how my business works, and extra art class. And so, generally, most Chinese teenagers I've met, they might be good at a sport, but they're not necessarily good at lots of different sports. I think that's a sad thing about the culture. I think Chinese families should really take their kids out to play a lot more sports, because it means you're healthy and you enjoy your life a lot more than just having lots of extra classes in your free time. Next question here. What do you think about the salaries athletes earn these days? Stop. Well, I think that the salaries that the top athletes earn these days is ridiculous. I mean, you hear about hundreds of millions of dollars for the best players in the world. And yet you have people in poor villages in Africa and parts of the west of China, even in parts of Australia, you have, and America, you have poor areas where people don't have a great life. And you know, some of these people work very hard. Farmers work very hard and don't have a lot of money. In fact, you'd probably say farmers work harder than most athletes. So I think it's a little bit unfair that they earn so much money at the top level of sport. Okay, we're going to go through a few questions. I was meant to make them come up one by one, but we'll just continue with this. So, what new technology do most people use these days? I think these days everybody has the two basic things in their life, their phone and their computer. Even 10 years ago, not everyone had their own computer, but I think these days most people in cities and developed world have their own computer, and pretty much everywhere people have their own phone. Aside from this, within our home, we might have lots of other technology, such as technology for cooking and cleaning. We'll have TVs, fridges, washing machines. We might have entertainment systems like a PlayStation or an Xbox. And so again, that's a bit of a listing question. Next question. What did people do before they had this technology? So think about that. Do you see the connection there between that question and the previous question? That's also a very common thing. The second question will ask for something related to the first question. Think for a moment. So I've just talked about phone, computer, washing machine, TV, things like this. So we need to pick probably two of those things and mention how we lived our lives before. Well, before mobile phones and even before telephones, people just had to send a letter or go to visit people. Now, of course, we've had phones for quite a long time now, but in the past it was a home phone, a landline, and so you'd have to pick up the phone and phone them. And if they weren't home, you missed them. Whereas now, of course, we can contact people so easily. In terms of washing clothes, it used to take people a long time to heat up water and to carry water and to scrub the clothes by hand. Now we just throw it in the washing machine, press a button, and come back 40 minutes later, and it's done. So we have a lot more time free because we don't have to wash clothes by hand. So again, I've said specifically what we did before we had that technology. Would you say technology makes people happier? So again, that first question is a pretty easy one. It's a bit of basic vocabulary. Even the second one's not too difficult. You're basically saying what people did before phones or TVs. Now we're getting to some deeper questions here. So would you say technology makes people happier? Pause, practice. I don't think technology makes people happier. In fact, I think actually technology is part of the reason why a lot of people are unhappy these days, because we never relax completely. You come home from work or school and you get on your phone and you're checking all your friends' messages on WeChat or other social media. You get messages and phone calls all the time, whereas before, when you were not at home, nobody phoned you because you were out doing stuff. But now you're constantly getting messages and phone calls from your friends. And at the same time, I think technology has done things for us that we used to maybe feel better about doing, making things with our hands and achieving something like, you know, cleaning your home, washing your clothes. Sometimes this had a sense of achievement. It gave you purpose in life. Now we have so much free time. We're like, let's play some silly games. And that can be a little bit depressing. Okay, that question's opinion. You might completely disagree with me, and that's okay, as long as you can say why you think technology makes people happier. Again, most of the questions in part one are about your life. A lot of questions in part three are about our opinion about a topic. And there's often many answers that can be right. And there's not really many answers which would be wrong. How might technology change in the future? Well, I think, of course, technology is getting smaller but more powerful. So, oh, sorry, I didn't give you a chance to pause at the video. So I'll give you a moment there, pause the video, practice your answer. 3. Well, I think the biggest changes for technology in the future is that the technology will get smaller but more powerful. So for example, a lot of people have smartwatches these days, but at the moment they're connected to our phone. But I think eventually that will go. I think eventually the phone will disappear and we might just have our phone and everything will be on the smartwatch with maybe a small earpiece that we put in so we can listen to the other people while we speak into our hand. And I'd also like to think about the idea of VR technology, the idea that we can put on the helmet and see the world and travel and have a meeting with people on the other side of the world, but they're right there. When we put the headset on, it feels like they're sitting right next to us. Of course, there's going to be so many changes in technology, so there's lots of possible answers for that question. Okay, so part 3. One thing we really need to remember is your answers shouldn't be too simple. We want to know that you can speak for a little bit longer than you did in part 1. The questions, as you saw there, a little bit easier. Just naming some different kinds of sports, naming some different kinds of technology, basic vocabulary questions. Then we get about much more opinionated questions. You know, athlete salaries, that could be a debate. You know, people could talk about that for an hour and argue that. How might technology change? There's lots of possibilities there. So you'll see that by the end of part 3, the questions are very, very, very open-ended questions that could have many, many different possible answers. Okay, so that is the end of video 7 for my series. And I'll be back very shortly. Well, in real time, I'll be making the next video in about 2 minutes. So everyone else, take a rest, send me some questions, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.